Welcome to Watching the Throne.
A lyrical analysis of Kanye West.
My name's Chris Lambert.
My name's Travis Bean, and today's our special Halloween edition of the show.
Yeah, it's pretty fitting, isn't it?
Yeah, you got the moon. It reminds you of werewolves. You think of the nighttime. It's just like, ooh, getting the shivers just thinking about it.
Dun 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 dun. Gonna get copyright claimed for me just doing a beat.
Oh, man. Speaking of Halloween, and I know this does not pertain to the subject matter today, I watched Carrie last night for the first time, and it keeps making me feel so old to say this kind of thing, but in like 12 years. Have you ever seen that movie?
Years ago, probably more than 12 years ago.
Then you're in the same boat as me, and you need to watch it again because holy crap, it's amazing.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, it's incredible.
You're talking about the, it would have been nice if I remembered her name.
Not the Chloe Grace Moretz version.
Yeah.
The Sissy
Not that
Spacek version.
Okay.
The Brian De Palma version.
Yes, a De Palma night.
Yeah, let's have a De Palma night together in our respective homes.
The De Palma nights have a De Palma night.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
What's your favorite De Palma movie?
Passion is probably that's a controversial favorite to have because it's a new movie and a lot of people don't like it. I that's more of a personal pick. If I'm branching out a little bit and I'm like, what movie would I say someone needs to watch who like wants to experience the ultimate De Palma movie? Either Femme Fatale, Carrie, or like Blowout. Those three. I mean, all three of those are just incredible.
Blowout's my favorite.
Ooh.
I haven't watched a lot of the others. I watched the one that you like. I already forgot its name.
Femme Fatale? Passion?
No, Passion. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I watched Passion. That was when we were in Iowa, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And then I guess the Mission Impossible.
Oh, Mission Impossible is great.
But I'm trying to think if I've watched like a lot of others. Like I saw Scarface a long time ago.
Scarface, Carlito's Way.
Yeah, which I didn't really like either of them that much.
Oh, really? Yeah. Actually, I like both those movies a lot, but they aren't my favorite De Palma movies.
Well, look at us. Just taking the conversation all over the place from Yay music to De Palma movies. We've gone to the moon and back.
Oh, man, look at that. I was going to try to think of a De Palma movie that involved the moon, but Chris, you handled it perfectly.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Moon. I'm so excited to talk about Moon.
Moon.
I say it every time the song comes on. Moon.
It's like the Indians for a while had this guy Shin-Soo Choo on their team. Whenever he get a hit,
he was great for my fantasy team.
Oh yeah, absolutely right. He was like a 20 homer, 20 steal kind of guy. Hit for average, 80 RBI. But he, whenever he get a hit, the crowd would just be like, "Choo, Moon."
Yeah, Moon. Now every time I see Kid Cudi, I'm just gonna do that. Which is often.
Yeah, you see each other at the grocery store all the time. It's crazy.
Yeah, he had to put a restraining order on me. He found out that it wasn't all just coincidence. I was, in fact, following him.
That is a perfect story for Halloween. You being a creep.
Yeah. You know what? That's why I really connect with Moon, because when he says, like, how can I get through? I put myself in that perspective. Like, how do I get to Cudi?
Oh, God.
How do I work through this legal nonsense to meet my favorite guy?
It's taking the turn. I'm just imagining, Robin Williams in 1 Hour Photo and just how it goes from so lovable to so creepy so fast.
All right. Don't compare me to that guy. I take everything back.
All right. So
you compare me to Robin Williams, just at the character he plays in that movie.
Not the 1 Hour Photo version of Robin Williams. We have track 13 from Donda. So we're almost there. We have 11 left in the main discography.
Yeah,
or the main
or 10
track list.
I think.
Yeah, I don't know how to count.
And that's if, Come to Life doesn't have like 2 episodes or something, which it probably will.
Come to Life and Jesus Lord.
Oh, God, Jesus Lord. That might be a 3-parter.
Jesus Lord.
We do one on just that line in the song.
let's talk about the genius of Swizz Beatz saying Jesus Lord.
Oh, I love it.
Okay, so Moon, track 13, and this comes in, I guess what we're saying is kind of the third mini arc of the album, and bringing us to the climax of the end of the first half, right? Or the end of the first major act. So right. You have these first arc of Donda Chant, Jail, God Breathed, Off the Grid, that kind of set up a lot of the energies and tensions where Kanye's talking about his divorce, getting into some ego and the tension with angels and demons and God's presence, but then also feeling a little bit combative with the people around him, which kind of ties back to Jail. And that culminates with Hurricane, where Kanye's kind of taking a step back and realizing he needs God to save him, that he might be drowning a little bit, and he goes through some of the poor decision making he has made throughout the recent past. And after that song, we head into what is the next little mini arc, which is Praise God Through Believe What I Say. And on these songs, we see a more combative Ye, like specifically kind of ready to face off or square up with some people. It seems that Praise God, Jonah, Okay, and Junior all have lines or multiple lines on each song that deal with Drake.
Especially Junior.
Especially Junior. We know that over this last 6-month period as Kanye was crafting this album, there were continued tensions with Drake. There were reports that Ye was supposed to squash the beef with Travis Scott's brokering
with Travis Scott.
Oh yeah, Travis Scott was brokering a meetup with between. So
I misunderstood.
Yeah. So Ye was going to squash the beef with Drake, thanks to Travis Scott brokering a meetup between the two.
Thank you for phrasing it that way.
You're welcome. Which Drake canceled last minute the first night. They rescheduled, and apparently Drake canceled again, and then they rescheduled, and Drake canceled the third time.
You love telling this story. I'm enthralled by it every time. Is he going to show up the third time? No.
He didn't. But that seems to have really lit a fuse with things, as there was kind of this album showdown brewing. So you have this middle portion that seems to get at a lot of those tensions that were going on, and just maybe some frustrations Ye was having overall, and kind of capturing more of that I'm frustrated with these external people, and letting that get dramatized, letting that spill out and spill over, culminating with Believe What I Say, which kind of follows up on some of the thoughts on Jail, where Ye's talking about his divorce with Kim, and with Hurricane as some things come up there as well. So it's the third song to really start to dive into the current status of things with Kim, the way the relationship ended, and it won't be the last one, as we start getting into more of those talking points on Lord I Need You and Pure Souls and Come to Life. But Believe What I Say ended that chapter, and now we're in this I need to change how I'm approaching some of these things section, which is 24, Remote Control, Moon, and culminates with Heaven and Hell, which is really the tipping point we feel of the album, which there's been this tension essentially between angels and demons, God and the devil, and this push-pull dynamic, and that's finally getting resolved as Ye is working through these emotions, which really starts on 24, saying God's not finished, the devil isn't going to win, the devil's a lie. And we're seeing over the next couple songs this change in demeanor, in perspective, in who's in control really coming to the forefront. And Moon is part of this sense of loss, this sense of uncertainty about how you got where you are, the emotions that you're feeling, looking for something more, and trying to come to terms with some of these negative emotions that you're feeling, and is very cathartic in a lot of ways. So excited to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, that tension you're talking about, God and the devil, angels and demons, it's the way Kanye has really gravitated on his album narratives to tackling that kind of tension in your life, which is present for anybody. It doesn't necessarily need to be a religious thing. This idea that you could go down one path or the other, and one's good, one's bad. And how you overcome that, like, it's been so interesting to see how he's handled it since The Life of Pablo, where the albums have become more about achieving a balance and not so much like a straight narrative, like a straight journey we can kind of see on stuff like College Dropout or My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy or Jesus. What we're seeing here, and especially on Donda, is just how you shift yourself. Like, you don't stop being yourself. You know, you could associate a lot of negative energy with those first 10 songs where Kanye, you know, is being pretty antagonistic and kind of mean to some people. But like, when you come out on the other side of that, like, it isn't necessarily that you need an opposing energy to that, but you need a mix of both in your life. Like, you need to think about who you are and like who you want to be and who the people in your life expect you to be and what you mean to them. And there are all these things that come into play that it isn't as simple as this linear trajectory like we saw on the first few albums, which were, you know, very narrative focused. Like, this is something else. This is something very philosophical, meditative, like just reflecting on yourself and thinking about who you want to become and kind of the ebbs and flows you go through as you become that person. Nobody's perfect. Like, everybody makes mistakes. And sometimes we act in a way we're not proud of, or in a way where we think, well, I can't live my life like that. And that's really the beauty of this album, is that we see him gravitate from one energy to the other. At no time do you ever think like, oh, this is an exaggerated version of Kanye. Like, it all kind of feels like Kanye in moments we've seen him in. And this middle part of the album is so important to that balance, to that idea of shifting from one kind of person to another. And part of that ebb and flow process is you slowly throughout the course of your life, like, try to figure out who you are and who you want to be. It does. I mean, it takes forever. This is why, like, you know, each successive Kanye album, like, I feel like I relate to it more and more, even though I'm not very religious. Like, I see what he's talking about, and I recognize that in myself. Like, I think about those ebbs and flows I've gone through as well. And I'm still slowly trying as hard as I can to become the person I want to be. It's not easy. And he's reflecting how difficult it is through his, you know, just the artistic process he's taken on this album.
It's fascinating looking back on the recent projects, because, I mean, we see a lot of this duality of personality starting to come up really as early as Graduation, where Ye is looking through, like, I'm becoming a superstar and it's kind of changing how I'm behaving and acting. And he's aware of that and presenting that change on that album, and ending it with a little bit of this awareness of the loss of the personal. Like, you're gaining all of this fame, this money, this attention, the glory, but you're losing your home city. You're losing the connection you have to your big brother. And you start to get a little bit of these duality starting to form there. And then, like, 808s and Heartbreak, you have that tension between wanting to live a normal life and be a real boy and have love in a relationship, with the life you're living and the lifestyle you're living complicating all of that and making it impossible to feel like you're a real boy. Then My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy, right? You have this tension between the fantasy and the reality. What is your reality? What is fantasy? The lines start to blur, and you can lose track of who you are and how far you're going down this dark path. Yeezus, right? I mean, you have him wearing the mask for the first time on stage for a full performance, and then taking the mask off, with that mask being very symbolic of a version of him versus him at his core. And then The Life of Pablo, you have which one. You have the introduction of new Kanye and old Kanye dynamic, with Kanye setting that up, right? People had already been talking about his older albums versus his newer albums, but for him to ground it in terms of like who he is in old Kanye versus the new Kanye in terms of behavior, you have all these interesting like polarities going on. And then you made this great point about how he's been exploring these things since The Life of Pablo, in terms of, you look at Ye and it's darkness and the beauty that comes out of darkness, learning from your mistakes, right? So you have the dark songs, the pivot point, and then the brightness, the beauty that comes out of learning from the darkness. On Kids See Ghost, you have the tension of the ego and depressive thoughts and kind of the manicness that arises from being in this darker place on the first three songs, the pivot point, and then the awareness and the desire to keep moving forward and not let the darkness consume you, that's happening in the last three songs at Kids See Ghosts. And then Jesus is King, you have a similar dynamic, but it's in terms of religion. And how are you living your life in a way that's may not be the best religious practices, and then a pivot point, and then living your life that's like truly selfless, truly embodying a lot of this spirit of like giving and caring and using the gospel. So you have an album that's very self-focused in terms of how you're interacting with people in the external way. You have another album that's very internally focused, another album that's very spiritually focused, and then you have Donda that just does all three.
Yeah, it's just everything.
It's everything. And I think that's so cool to view this album in that context of seeing the individual mini projects where he starts to explore each of those topics, and then you get to Donda and it's just all of them crashing together into one like turbulent, beautiful project.
Yeah, that's what's great about this album. And people use the word magnum opus, which you could roll your eyes at, just like even using that phrase. But like it, in the ways you're describing, like that's what Donda feels like for Kanye. It doesn't necessarily have to be recognized as his best or your favorite, but to think about like what he's been building towards and like what is culminated with this album, like it is kind of everything he's been working through and struggling with. He's bringing his mom back into the fold like so prominently. It's just such an important personal album for him in a way that, of course, all of his albums are personal, but it really feels like it feels like he's achieved something different here. Like we're getting a full sense of who Kanye truly wants to be, who he wants to become, and where he's at. And everything, all the different kinds of sounds he's used on his albums, like they're all popping up here. Like all of those conflicting energies are happening. And that's what I really love about this album. What I really love about Moon is that it doesn't reflect any of that simply, or like it's not on a single track or anything. Like there are so many different elements to that. Like humans are way too complicated for that. Like there are just so many things that can affect you and happen to you, so many different paths you can go down. You feel conflicted emotions constantly. You both like want to live your best life and like achieve something like otherworldly, and you want to like, sometimes you want to clam up and not do anything and just disappear. That happens to everyone and you can't escape it. So to reflect that kind of energy, that just state of being we all relate to on an album, it feels impossible, but that, it is his magnum opus. Like he's kind of done it here.
Hasn't he?
Boy.
He hasn't he?
Were you getting choked up?
Getting a little emotional.
I get emotional when I think about Moon. Shit.
I know. And one of the grounding elements, I think we're going to talk about it. I think even before the 24 music video came out, we had similar thoughts in terms of what this song was kind of conveying. This idea that you've lost someone and associating where they've gone with the moon, right? You could use it as like going to heaven, going to the moon. It's just they're no longer on Earth, and you're thinking about like, I want to go to the moon. I want to be there with them in this place that's beyond like my feet on the ground on Earth. But when we got the 24 music video, you have this moment where Kanye goes ascending into the sky, and we get a shot where it's total blackness on the right side of the screen, but on the left side of the screen you have this moon-shaped like object in the sky or in the frame, and you see Donda's face superimposed on it. And even though it's a completely different song, we know that there's intercontextuality in Kanye albums. We know that you can have imagery in one music video that recalls right lines or concepts or motifs on other songs that are relevant to the album. And it just made me think of this idea of, you have what appears to be kind of outer space, the night sky, a place that is beyond the world where Kanye was, but isn't just the sky itself with all the clouds and that heavenly energy that we get where Kanye's floating. It's this separate space, and that's where Donda is, in this sphere that looks like a moon or could be a moon. So I think that imagery kind of doesn't confirm, but at least points towards this idea of the moon kind of being this metaphor for when you've lost someone. You know, when they're gone, they go to the moon, and that's where you look for them. That's where you want to go if you want to be with them. So it's carrying that energy of not just loss, but also presence. And just the same way that the moon kind of revolves through the sky, coming and going over the course of a day and night. So you kind of have this sense of the people that you've lost kind of coming and going, and they're more present and more like there above you at times than at other times.
Totally. Yeah. In the really penetrating part of the song, the reality that's being conveyed here is, yes, you have everything you just discussed, which is beautiful to think about, that like their presence is there, that there's something in the sky, like that's still of earth, that reminds you of them and can be a form of connection with them. But then there's also the more troubling idea of the song, that going to the moon, the idea of going up, is that you end things, that the way to reach those people is to end your life, because then I can be with them. And that's a struggle that, again, a lot of people relate to and a lot of people deal with. And it's such a beautiful way to think. I mean, I hate to use the word beauty when talking about suicide, but like it gives the moon, the idea of the moon, especially in the song, so much more power, and what it can really mean to think about those people. Like, yes, it can be such a relief to think about your mom and what you're doing here on Earth and how proud of her she would be, and you can look up to the moon and think about that. But there's something scary about that image too. Like, what could you do to physically be with that person, because you're used to the physicality, of your body, of Earth, of like being with that person. It gives the moon this it just overall, like, there's such romanticism involved with the moon on this song. And in the context of this album, thinking about, especially here in the middle part of the album, where you're kind of shifting between these two energies you could be living by, and the whole time you're thinking about your mom and how your mom would be looking at you here on Earth. It's so heavy to think about those conflicted energies happening here right in the middle of the album. Like, you could go down one path, which is good, or down this other path, which is tragic.
Yeah, right. That fitting for the moon to have such tidal energies, like that push-pull dynamic, that idea of like lifting up but then tearing down. Like, you could go down the path of a positive energy or down the path of a negative energy. And I don't know if that's purposeful in the fact that the next song's Heaven and Hell.
Right.
Just this idea of like the two aspects of a single entity, right? In the same way that this album focuses on God and the devil, it's like you have that kind of contained in the emotions you feel in regards to losing someone and the memory of that person. There are times where that memory can be very inspiring, and there's times where that memory can be very devitalizing, or just a siren call for something much darker. And trying to find a footing with that relationship with loss that empowers you rather than calls to you.
Right. In all of that too, I mean, we're talking about the conflicting energy you could be reading in the song. Like, you definitely feel it in the moment and in the structure of this album as you're going song by song. But we know that the album ends with songs like Pure Souls, Come to Life, No Child Left Behind. Like, there's a positive upswing at the end. So it gives the song even more power that we know, like, it's going somewhere good, that even though you're feeling these conflicting emotions, like, you're going to overcome them.
Yeah, Moon kind of serves in narrative. You talk about the nadir. There's usually this darkest part, right, before things get better. So if you have a movie that has a group of characters, you might have the nadir be the group breaks up. They all go their separate ways before the main one figures something out and gets everybody back together again, and they finally conquer whatever's going on. But in almost everything, there's that nadir, and I hate it. It's my least favorite part of every story. Like, even watching Ted Lasso recently, you had the nadir episodes where one of the couples everybody likes may break up. Like, one character that you've been rooting for ends up being an asshole. Like, you're just like, no. Like, but then things usually get better, and you're like, okay, but why did we have to go through it?
Yeah, it's just like arbitrary.
Yeah, sometimes it really is, right? Thinking about Adam Sandler movies. But that's just kind of the structure of a lot of films and stories at this point. But Moon seems to be the nadir of this album. It's the lowest point when it comes to like mental health, emotions. It's getting at kind of the core dark energies that surround loss, that maybe have been hinted at here and there. We think back to a song like Jonah, and we talked about how Vori's verse really gets into this idea of losing people and still feeling overwhelmed by that loss. Little Durk has the same thing going on, losing people close to him and wanting revenge, getting angry. And Ye kind of steps through, and he doesn't talk about losing someone in the same way that Vori and Little Durk do. He's more trying to manage the situation, while then also going off on some like, hey, Drake, be respectful, right, so we don't like go down a dark path. But Moon is really kind of capturing a lot of that energy that Vori and Little Durk had in terms of how do I deal with losing these people that were close to me? And it's something that Ye continues to explore on Jesus Lord, right? And this idea of loss, of death, isn't just conveyed through those lyrics, but with Donda and the black album cover. I mean, we typically associate a black color with mourning. People in mourning wear black. Funeral processions usually involve black. We know that Ye lost Donda in 2007 and has been dealing with those emotions ever since. People thought there was going to be a lot more grief on this album than there really was. But I think Moon is the song that starts to recall a lot of the grief, even though it's not Kanye singing. It feels like something that is getting to the core of what he's been feeling. And to what you're saying about like the positive and negative way of channeling that emotion and knowing that there's an upswing, I feel like Donda is the song that starts to show that upswing. Instead of trying to go to the moon and be with this person, which would be the negative path, you have a song like Donda where Ye's recalling his mom's words. He's bringing her back to earth in a way through her speeches, through her memory, and keeping her spirit alive in that way and keeping her present in that way. So there's a way to bring the people back to you without you having to go to them.
Yeah, man, that gives such power to the song Donda and the words she has in that song. Because wasn't that was the song that was originally the first track in the album?
Yeah.
When it was South Carolina, whatever, and Pusha T was on it. It really makes you realize how much of a puzzle process it is to piece together albums like this. Like, people always complain all the songs have shifted, but to me, Kanye's just piecing it together like a puzzle and figuring out what makes the most sense. You could do this with any set of songs. You could make a playlist of any random collection of songs and form some sort of narrative or process you see somebody going through. And I love that Donda comes after this instead of at the beginning. Like, it's this build to her, especially when you've struggled so much. Just thinking about a song like Moon, where you could do something awful to yourself to reach her. But then we get this idea of like, you move past that and she becomes part of the album. You hear her words, and that's when the upswing happens. Like, that's when we see you getting better. I just love that.
Yeah, the fact that really zooming out, you have Donda chant, which is essentially asking for Donda, right? It's a meditation on Donda. It's a calling out to Donda. And then you have Moon, which is this nadir, as we talked about, this longing that then leads to Donda, which is this, no, she's here, she's present. So you get the payoff on the Donda chant, right? Which is this questioning, this longing, which climaxes with Moon, gets resolved on Donda, and then ultimately you conclude with No Child Left Behind, which also has that sense of closure, right?
Right.
Like, my mom did not leave me behind. No child's left behind. I'm still like connected in a way. So you have this nice sequencing arc that goes from longing for to the nadir to presence to then feeling like, no, I'll never be left behind.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. I love this album. Holy shit.
Yeah, it's so good. All right, Moon lyrics.
Moon, Don Toliver. I love Don Toliver.
His new album was pretty good. Have you listened yet?
I have not listened to his new album. I've definitely heard songs off of it. And I love, there are like 12 or 13 Don Toliver songs that I really love. But yeah, I should listen to the new one. Is it good?
I enjoyed it. Like, it started off stronger than it kind of ended for me. Mm-hmm. But I think there were like 3 or 4 songs I really liked.
Yeah. He's perfect for this song. I'll put it that way.
Yes, he is. Just having that, like, I don't even know if it's a falsetto, but
ooh, yeah,
whatever, like, piercing.
Yeah, it's just like his aesthetic, like it's like what Vori has. Like, it's this really unique sound his voice makes. I just love it.
Watching The Voice, I think they would say, I love your tone. You have such an interesting tone.
And I love how the song starts with just him. Like, there's nothing surrounding him. It really conveys the sense of solitude.
Solitude, emptiness, outer space, nighttime. Yeah. You're getting that idea of a dark night of the soul kind of thing.
Yeah. And then that music kicks in, and it's just like the song just starts to float.
I want to go to the moon. So, feels pretty harmless up front. But the next line is what starts to give it a little bit of the darker energy with Don't Leave So Soon, which now you're getting at this idea of loss, of somebody going, of being left alone, of longing. So no longer is I want to go to the moon just kind of like an innocent, I want to be an astronaut thing. It's
right.
It's like, oh, somebody has left, and they left sooner than they should have, which, could be a relationship ending. It could be a person you love dying, passing away, whatever. Something ended prematurely. And in the aftermath of that, you have this desire to follow the person, which in this case is embodied by going to the moon. And you get that echoing Don't Leave So Soon coming in, followed by How Could I Get Through? Which, raises some questions. How could I get through as in, how do I talk to this person who is looking to leave or has already left? Or how could I get through as in, how do I get from where I am now to the moon? How do I make this desire a reality? Either way, you get this sense of this person feeling at a loss for things and really like searching for something.
Yeah. I mean, that's pretty much the energy of this whole song. Like, even if you can read the song positively in some ways, especially when you think about the trajectory of the album and how Kanye ultimately goes to a good place, this is a heavy song. Like, this is a reflective moment, a personal moment where you're feeling stuff like this. Like, it's not easy to handle all of this at once.
Right. Like, I mean, if it's I just want to talk to my mom again. I just want to have this connection. How do I get through to like feeling inspired by her? Or if you want to put it in context of the divorce, right? Don't leave so soon. How do I get through and like save the relationship that we had? And you might not be able to, which is something that Ye has to come to terms with on Lord, I Need You, Pure Souls Come to Life, right? He's dealing with the fact that his marriage is over in some ways. Not in some ways, in ways, but in some ways, he's dealing with the fact that his marriage is over. There's other elements, of course, and dynamics going on, but that's one of the major like closures that we get on this album. So you can read into that, or it can just read like, how do I get out of this existence and get to where you've gone, which is the darkest way.
Yeah, we hadn't really talked about Kim. Like we talked before the episode started, and we talked a lot so far. I would say about 35 minutes actually.
Jesus.
And that was one thing I was thinking about when I was reading through these lyrics, like, thinking about how it could be relating to Kim, because I think Kim and Donda, they're two very important energies on this album and represent very important pieces of Kanye's life, because Donda, the person who raised him and kind of represents who he isn't here. And this mother figure who is on Earth that he's spent, 10 years with and has kids with is here. And that relationship is ending. So you have these two relationships that like aren't exactly whole anymore and aren't going to be what they used to be. So you could read the lyrics, I think, like that, because pretty much any song where you're thinking of Donda, you could also be thinking of Kim, I think. So I want to go to the moon, don't leave so soon. Like Kim is leaving him, and like it gives you this feeling like, oh, I just want to like escape Earth and go to the moon. How do I get through to you? Like, how do I rekindle this relationship with you? Like, how do we move past this? All of that energy is there as well.
And if anybody's like, I think that's a reach, and just remember that at the third listening party, which Kanye, the setup was his childhood home. He recreated the Chicago home he was in with his mom, put it on that mound of dirt, and essentially had what was a funeral for the home. And he was going to burn it down. That was the original plan. But instead, they just ended up filming that scene where a person catches on fire, like Kanye, in quotes, catches on fire and comes out of the house. But that whole show that was so steeped in his childhood and the dynamic, like his life with his mom, maybe not the dynamic with his mom, but his life with his mom and the sense of loss of that life.
And you had the funeral procession coming through.
Yeah. Like there's that sense of loss and his mom and his former life that permeates all of that. And for that to conclude with Kim coming out in that all white attire, feeling very heavenly, chills. Very angelic, it recalls not just the spirit of Donda, because you're saying this mother figure, she's the mother to Ye's children. And so you have this connection of his mom, but then also his like wife that's a mom of his children. There's just some kind of mixing of energies there where it's not absurd to see how this song could be about like both of those things.
Yeah, I mean, we're just talking to this invisible person. Like anybody who thinks that way, like can only be one thing. Like you're limiting art when you do something like that. Like maybe Kanye didn't mean to do half the shit we talk about in this show, but like a lot of it ends up being conveyed, especially when you know more about the person and how many things can subconsciously come out of your work. Like, yeah, all of this stuff is happening with Kanye. This is all stuff he's going through.
Yeah, there's like intentionality in art. Then there's also the whole death of the artist movement that talks about like unconsciousness being the dominant thing in artistic readings, and how even if the author of a work tells you exactly what's going on, they may not be aware of things that they put in due to like just their worldview or not wanting to process. Like, yeah,
love it.
Yep. Anyway, so we have Don Toliver coming through, and then he falls away, and Kid Cudi comes in.
Ooh, yeah, here he comes,
and we get that opening. The hum.
I wish I could just wake up to that every morning.
And his first line, "Here we go strapping we up," which...
Oh, yeah. I wanted to talk about this line.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. We've talked a lot about how from Off the Grid to what Jonah to Okay Okay and was it Junia as well, all start to get into like gang elements. Like there's a lot of language that refers to gangs, to street life, to street violence. It's something that comes up on Jesus Lord. It's something that comes up on Pure Souls. It's a pretty heavy motif on this album. So Cudi using strapping, like just like carrying a gun, having a gun, like firing a gun, fits in that way, but is also like kind of shocking.
Yeah. So you're right. I was thinking about all of that when I hear him, say strapping. Like it feels like it doesn't fit, but it does when you think about the context of the album, and you could see it playing into that. But I think more when I really think about the context of this song and just this part of the album and where the album's going, I see it more as less like antagonistic and like I'm going to go after somebody to like more of a self-defense thing. And I could see it just being used purely as a metaphor that way, that the song, which is clearly, I mean, from the get-go, is reflecting this idea of grief, of loneliness, of longing, this idea that you strap up, like you're in self-defense mode mentally, and you're thinking about like how to work through something this daunting. It's kind of it's an interesting way to go about it if that's what he's doing, but I kind of like it for that he takes something that could be really negative and really violent and makes it just like part of who you are and like a natural way of being. I don't know, it's an interesting way to go about it.
Yeah, I like it. It's loaded, not to make a pun.
You were waiting to do that, weren't you?
Nah, it just kind of came to me right in that moment.
Okay.
I think if you watch the video, you can kind of see my eyes light up for just a second right before I say it. Yeah, it's. I like it. I think what you said was well said. So we up, like, I'm ready to go. I've like this weapon strapped to me. Like I'm feeling defensive, but I'm also feeling like offensive.
Yeah.
But to follow that up with never forget all the memories, it kind of gets to, and as we go into Cudi's verse, you see that there's like contrasting energies coming through, like going from sweet moment to lonely moments to feeling like truly blessed, but then trouble in my soul. So you're getting a lot of these tensions, and this initial couplet, which isn't even a couplet, these initial two lines, get it, a lot of that like dichotomy going from like strapping up and everything that entails to suddenly nostalgic and never forgetting all the memories that you had with someone, which gets back to what we were saying with like don't leave so soon. There's loss, whether that's somebody passing away or the loss of a relationship, but it also again recalls Jonah as well, with just people feeling that loss and strapping up and like the street violence.
Yeah. I really like what you said about all that, how there are those conflicting energies. And to me, that conveys a heavy sense of optimism. Again, the song could be read as a very sad song, and it is in a lot of ways, but that's the part of the song I think motivates people, and why it works so well in this part of the album is how optimistic it is because you always try for something better. Like you keep going, like even strapping, as negative as that could sound, like is a kind of a positive in that way, that you're on self-defense, that you're trying to move past something, like you're working towards something. But that doesn't mean these negative thoughts don't come into your life. Like that's just a natural part of life. And it's your ability to keep moving past those negative thoughts and to keep working through them, to not push them away, but to recognize them and know that you need to overcome them. Like that's a really beautiful part of the song, and just part of, anybody's life journey. If you want to keep getting better and better, like you have to work through that stuff.
Yeah. And it feels like it is in spiritual alignment with the push-pull dynamics that were going on in Kids See Ghosts, with feeling overwhelmed by the ghosts and then feeling like infused with like protection and spirit and moving forward. So the second part of that album, you get a lot of the, all right, things are going to be okay. I understand that I've had scars and depression, but I know I can keep moving forward. I've been reborn. I know that like the Lord will shine his light upon me and save me, please. And here already you have like we up, like, okay, we up, like strap in, we up, here we go. And then after all the memories, you get sitting, I sip out my cup, which makes you think about somebody that's now just sitting and drinking, right, and kind of lost in the nostalgia. So you have this, as you're saying, like there's at least action and activity in the idea of strapping and being up that is then undermined by the fact that he's now just sitting and like drinking what I would imagine would be an alcoholic beverage.
Oh, I thought it was, I always pictured him drinking coffee.
It could be. It could just be a morning cup of joe.
Or early afternoon cup of joe.
Maybe some tea.
Ooh, tea. That seems like Cudi energy right there. Tea. Yeah,
afternoon tea.
I love that line. Sit and sip out my cup. It's weird to say I love that line, but again, like think at the very beginning of the song, how this sense of solitude is conveyed. Like that's what this whole song is. There's 3 people in it, but it feels like you're just sitting with one person, or each of these people individually are like going through these emotions, and you're in this moment with them as they think. So like I sip out my cup. I mean, I know that feel. Again, this is maybe why I'm thinking of coffee. Like I'm thinking about the morning when like you're in that more reflective state. It's just, it's, I don't know. I love that. And thinking I should be a better me. Like that's the kind of thought you have in that moment.
Talking about, 3 people, but feeling very isolated reminds me of the great 3 Doors Down song, Here Without You. Or no,
do I know this one? That? Is this one of the hits?
Yeah. Here without you, baby. And I lost my lonely mind. And I dream about you all the time.
I'm going to play this song because I want to know.
You, baby.
Oh, yeah. I'm starting to get it. I'm picking it up as you're singing more. Let me skip the chorus.
And tonight, girl, it's only you and me.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah. Classic. Love this song.
I don't know if that's one that I'm thinking of. There's some 3 Doors Down song where it's like each verse is him embodying a different perspective of like a lonely, isolated person, like wishing for something.
You should just tweet out like Kid Cudi equals 3 Doors Down.
See how that goes.
Don't explain it. Just leave it there.
Tag Kid Cudi.
Hey, who knows? Maybe he's a big fan.
Yeah. Or maybe he quote tweets me and he's just like, I can't believe the disrespect I receive on this app every day.
Probably that.
Yeah, probably. Anyway, so I sip out my cup, thinking I should be a better me. So whether it's coffee, tea, alcohol, water, kombucha, he's having this moment of reflection, thinking I should be a better me. So in the aftermath of these memories that he has with this person, we know that there's been a fall off. Whether or not he was a better person before, at least at this point in his life, he's not feeling like he's the best version of himself he can be. And there's some regret, there's some longing, which also kind of ties back into what we were saying from what's his face? Baby Keem on Praise God, where it's just like, let's get right. Kanye talking about like getting out of the graveyard, coming back to life. There's remote control. We were talking as well about there being indulgence at the very beginning, and then God kind of coming through and taking Kanye's hand and taking control of the situation. Mm-hmm. And 24 also gets at like, I can improve my life. Like things aren't, even I think things are bad right now, but God's not finished. Things will be better. Like we're going to be okay. So it continues this idea of change that's been so present in the last few songs and wasn't necessarily present in the first 10. So it's kind of continuing this motif of improvement, which leads into heaven and hell and like silencing the devils, embracing God, and everything that we see in the aftermath of that, with the last run of songs being such an upswing to like New Again and Come to Life. And we're going to have all these payoffs, and Travis, you and I are going to be gushing and losing our minds.
I like all the hints at that upswing too. I mean, we even have it right here in the next lines, like, truly I'm blessed from the start. So much to say in these melodies, like to go from something negative to positive immediately. Like that's just, the natural part of becoming a better person. Like you do go through those motions.
Yeah. And you have that reorientation, right? Instead
Right.
of thinking like, oh, my life is awful, like I'm longing. It's just like, you know what? No, I'm blessed. Like I have a lot of great things to say in these melodies. Like I stare at the sky, the moon singing sweets, but we already know the moon may not have, it has both that positive and negative energy, right?
Yeah.
So when the moon's singing sweet, it can be singing sweet in the sense of you're feeling the presence of the person that you lost. And is it that nice that you're feeling their presence? But given how conflicted Cudi is, it's also, and how the tone of Toliver, Don Toliver as well, it's possible that the moon singing sweet has some more like fairy tale darkness undertones as well. Thinking about like the siren song, where like the sirens out in the ocean have this beautiful song, but they lure you towards death. So the moon that's singing sweet has both that energy of like calming, while also that energy of like luring you to something darker.
Yeah. It's especially heavy and powerful to hear Cudi talk about the moon, because like it's been such a prominent part of his discography and represented all those things you discussed. Like it has had both negative and positive energy in his songs. And the great thing about Kid Cudi is like all of his albums are this. It reminds me of Donda. Like his career has been a slow progression of like working towards something better and fixing yourself and pushing forward. And the moon ends up representing a lot of that inherently on his albums.
Yeah, and for anyone that doesn't know, which if you're listening to this show, I imagine you do know, but just in the odd chance,
maybe 50 years from now, you don't know who Kid Cudi is. Like this podcast will still exist then, so maybe you're finding out now.
It will still exist. Hello to our future children that are like, what were our dads like?
Oh, they were weirdos.
Yeah. But Kid Cudi's debut album, he had the mixtape A Kid Named Cudi, but his big like first release was Man in the Moon, The End of Day, which was a concept album involving like Cudi as the man on the moon. And he starts detailing kind of this dichotomy between who he is in the day and who he is at night, and the moon being this source of like energy and peace, and a place where he gets away from some of the struggles of his life. So you get the Act 1, The End of Day, Act 2, Rise of the Night Terrors, Act 3, Taking a Trip, Act 4, Stuck, Act 5, A New Beginning. And the last song on the album is like, the last songs are Higher and Up, Up and Away, which kind of have this energy of going into the sky, ascending, right? Mm-hmm. And then you had Man of the Moon 2, The Legend of Mr. Rager, and then recently released Man of the Moon 3. As I'm clicking through, oh my god, okay, Kid
The
Cudi.
Chosen.
Yeah, The Chosen, which I need to go back to. I haven't listened to it since it came out.
Yeah, I do too.
But like you have songs on there like Pale Moonlight, Heaven on Earth. It's still getting into some of the moon motifs and concepts and ideas. So it is like Cudi singing about the moon always has that kind of power to it, since, as you're saying, it is such a huge part of his discography. But we also know his discography is one that is made up of dealing with mental health struggles and dealing with these mixed energies of the positive and the negative, and feeling the brightness of the moon and the dark side of the moon, right? So when the moon's singing sweet, you do have that positive energy, but there's that implication, that undertone, and we see that come up pretty quickly. Like Stare at the Sky, the moon singing sweet, oh my god, such a sweet moment. like, is it this peaceful? Is it this nice? And then angels, they say I'm not ever weak. And in this aftermath of feeling like angels that are praising you for never being weak, he says such a lonely moment. Like, yeah, man,
that is probably one of my favorite lines on the album. This idea that angels, something so inherently associated with goodness, of a spirituality, it even when they say something comforting to you, like that you're not ever weak, it's a lonely moment because they're not there, and they're not somebody you can reach out and touch and speak to. They kind of just exist in your spiritual realm, and as you like try to become a better person, you think of the angels like they're kind of your guiding light, but they're not there, and that's the lonely moment. And it makes you think of the people who aren't in your life anymore that you can't reach as you look up to the moon. And that is so heavy and real and honest. And especially on this album, it's called Donda, but so it's Kanye working through like losing his mom and how he can rekindle that connection. But thinking of people you've lost even here on earth, like Kanye's lost Kim, how lonely you can feel in moments like that and how tough it is to carry forward. It's just, it's very heavy.
Well, there's also that idea that I think Cudi would, or maybe has talked about in the past, but I think he would like nod his head to and say, yes, this idea that when you are having mental health problems, when you are having like confidence problems and your self-esteem is at its lowest points, for someone to say like, you're strong, like you're smart, you're great, you just hear the opposite of that. Like being praised makes you feel scared. Because if they think you're never weak, it just makes you think of all the times that you are weak or that you do feel weak. Right. If somebody says they love you, you think, why would you love me? Like, I'm such a damaged, broken person.
Yeah.
There's this inability or struggle to accept a compliment or to accept praise. And I can see that also getting at that. Like, you have someone as pure as an angel saying, like, hey, you're never weak. Like, it's okay. And Cudi's initial reaction is just to say, oh, that's such a lonely moment because it's making me feel all of this anxiety to be told that I'm never weak.
Yeah. Man, this line also makes you just think of like all the times angels are mentioned on this album, especially God Breathed, when Vori says like, devil's talking to me, angels talking to me, and the angels tell me it's okay to not feel okay. Like that there is always something, I don't know, that just because it's an angel doesn't make you like feel good. It makes you feel good. I don't even know how to phrase it. Like it's just a moment where you kind of recognize the reality of what is, because angels represent something beyond. It's like something you'll attain someday. But for now, like you're here where things can be shitty a lot of the time. And it's okay to not feel okay, but it's not, and you know that, but it's not okay to like, it's not easy to recognize that and keep living with that in mind. Like the easier thing to do is just to push all that away and to like give up. So I just love that energy is on multiple parts of this album where like, it's not just like angels or goodness, like they represent something you struggle with.
That was something that we pointed out when we did the God Breathed episode, was kind of the dichotomy between those lines, where Vori saying that the angels tell him it's okay to not feel okay, and Vori's just like, well, no, that's okay because I am okay. Like, yeah, I'm fine, everything's good, which aligns in some ways with Kanye's energy on that song and just being like, I know God breathed on this, like everything's awesome, I'm gonna be great. And then we see where things go. And we eventually have a song called Okay, Okay, where it's just like, okay, okay, I'm not okay. Where there's more of this opening up to realizing, or at least saying out loud, that things aren't as perfect or as great as you may have been letting on. And then here, for the angels to be saying praise and Cudi just to say, like, it's a lonely moment. Like, it feels like payoff. Though I did, Vori was doing some, like, Ask Me Anything on Twitter, and I asked if Kanye gave any instructions with the songs. And Vori is just like, no, he just let me do my thing. So, whether or not it's just coincidence that we have Vori with that line and then Cudi with this line, or divine intervention. It's just a nice alignment between the two lines.
I think that just speaks to how open Kanye is with his artistic process. I mean, we've seen it in action. He's played albums that aren't finished and like still working through ideas. I would imagine that like, the kind of album Kanye's making when you go into the studio and you're going to record your verse, and all these people conveying similar ideas. Like that's magic right there. That's art to me. Like you don't need to be all on the same page. Like, oh, you do this and then I'll say this. Like it just all comes out so naturally, and they all are getting at what Kanye's going for.
When imagine from what we know with previous albums, what other people have said, even what Kanye has said in interviews about how he pushes people, there's probably a lot of conversation around songs and concepts as well, where people have an idea of what he's looking for and what he's aiming for.
Totally. I love that.
Yep. But okay. Heaven Knows I Might Never Sleep. So yeah, we've gone from, here we go strapping we up, which makes it feel like the start of a day or like the start of taking action, to sitting and sipping out of a cup, to now like not being able to sleep. So you're getting just these implications of things going from very active to now just a little bit of anxiety and paralysis and like laying in bed, not being able to sleep, and trouble in my soul. So you're getting a lot of the negative energies coming in, and that gets at the contrast that I was saying earlier. You just have Stare at the Sky, the moon singing sweet, oh my God, such a sweet moment, and then Lonely Moment, Trouble in My Soul, and the next two lines, hey, I've been praying, life can be draining. Like, my goodness.
Yeah.
So you're building up to this idea of being overwhelmed, of being like alone, not sure how to deal with it. And you're praying for a way out, like, Lord, shine your light upon me, save me, please, calling back to Cudi montage, right? And hey, we were late, trying to keep hauling on. I don't know where we were late comes in.
Yeah, I actually thought maybe he was saying we relate. It's kind of hard to tell.
That would make way more sense.
It would make it. I feel like they both would make sense in their own ways. Like, I guess we were late. Like you're late growing up or becoming spiritually aligned, better. I don't know. Something like that could be it.
I mean, it could also go to like we were late connecting, like, because we know that there's this idea of someone's been lost or you're longing for a person, right? So it could be we're just like, we were late in figuring things out.
Right.
We were late in getting our lives together, but you're trying to keep hauling on. Just something was missed. But even though like things that weren't punctual, weren't on time, you're still trying to do your best.
Yeah. And a line like we relate could just be something as simple as like you're saying it to the listener. Like these are things like we all go through, and like we relate with each other on these kinds of things, something like that.
Yeah. If it's like actually relating, then yeah, just life can be draining. We all relate to that, right?
Yeah.
But we're trying to keep hauling on.
And that line, I've been praying, life can be draining. That's another element of the song we haven't heavily discussed, because we've talked about losing people on earth. Like we're thinking of the Kanye divorce, of losing somebody, like the grief you could feel for your mom. But the other element of this, which is pretty present on the album, is just like your relationship with God and how there can be a lot of positive and negative energy in that relationship. You pray in moments of like, of good times, like you're so thankful for something, but you also pray when like things are tough, when you need help. And again, God isn't there. Like you're praying to somebody you can't see and hoping things will get better. And that's difficult for people to deal with, I think.
Yeah, the having faith, right? Even
Yes.
though the negative things might continue to pile on. And it's just as that happens, can you maintain faith? Isn't that the whole story of Job?
Right. Yeah.
Like in the OG Testament, what is it? The
Old Testament.
The Old Testament, yeah. In the Old Testament, Job just has all these awful things happen to him.
Yeah.
And wasn't it like God and the devil made a bet where the devil's like, let me do all these horrible things to Job, and if he still like keeps his faith, you win.
Yeah, right.
And it's like the devil kills Job's wife, kills his kids, ruins his flock, makes him destitute, and Job spends like 20 years in just absolute shit before God's like, see, he still has his faith. He still knows that things will get better. And the payoff of the story is that Job has a new wife, has like 20 new kids,
like 20,000
10,000 cattle. Yeah. Like, and that's not an exaggeration. It's legitimately like 20,000 sheep and 5,000 horses.
Yeah. And he just looks up to God and he's like, thanks.
Doesn't he live to like 400 years old?
Yeah,
or
and
like
you get to live longer.
Years old?
So you lose your family for 20 years, you get more sheep, and you get to live to an age where like you're so old that you can't do anything. That's his reward.
Yeah. It's but you know, faith.
But yeah, no,
that's
ultimately a good story.
Yeah, like things can be bad for a while, but if you maintain faith, there's this idea that they'll turn around, which gets back to what 24 is saying as well. Like, God's not finished. We're going to be okay. But then Cudi, instead of having, well, the last line's loaded because it's half glass, like a water that's half. I keep trying to frame it in a way that's not biased one way or another, but that's the crux of it. Is it half full or half empty? Right. So you get the glass of water that's either half full or half empty, and how you view it says, you know, it's supposed to say a lot about your worldview, right? So this line is one of those things where you can read it as half full or half empty. Him saying, I'm ashamed, and yet what I will see ain't nobody knows, so I go. This idea of, I mean, so the way to take that is either like dark thoughts and he's about to do something dramatic. He's going to put it in the euphemism of the song, go to the moon and like find his way there, which is scary. Or it's just, even though he's feeling this shame, nobody knows what lies ahead, right? Nobody knows what's in store. So I go. Like, I'm going to keep living. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep hauling on despite life being draining because we don't know what's going to happen next. So you have that tension of reading it in the worst case scenario where the shame is overwhelming and Cudi just wants to like get to the moon, or that way in which, you know, despite the shame, despite the draining, there's this idea of you don't know what's next. Things can get better, and so you keep going forward, which I would think, given where Cudi's been at these last few years and given where this album goes, I'd lean towards reading it in that way of, so I'm going to like keep moving forward. I'm going to keep going on rather than the darker way, but...
Yeah, the exact message on Reborn, basically.
Yeah, exactly. And the exact like Cudi montage, right? The end of Cudi, the end of Kids See Ghosts has such that energy, that mixed energy of feeling the darkness kind of starting to overwhelm you and praying, Lord, shine your light on me, save me, please. And knowing that you're going to keep going forward despite the back and forth dynamics. And I feel like this is just doing that or making that same point in a different way.
Yeah. And I think one last way you could read that Ain't Nobody Knows part is that because this song is so reflective and meditative, like nobody truly knows you and like what you struggled with and what you're going through. Like, I feel like that's the point of therapy, like to sit down and just like talk through things like, oh yeah, like that's why I do this and that. Like you know yourself so much better than like anybody else will. And it can be really heavy to confront those things about yourself, but only you know those things. Like nobody can tell you who you are. Like you're ultimately the one that has to recognize that stuff and like move forward and work through it.
Yeah. Which, I mean, the song I keep or always think about in terms of like Cudi and everything that he's talked about is Soundtrack to My Life. I feel like it's such a quintessential Cudi song that really gets at like the core of who he is, his aesthetic, and the chorus of that song is I've got some issues that nobody can see, and all of these emotions are pouring out of me. I bring them to the light for you. It's only right. This is the soundtrack to my life. It's like, you know, there are things going on inside of me that nobody else knows, but I put them into music because you're going to connect with them. It helps me. It helps you. You know you're not alone. And can read that there as well. Yeah. Or like this whole song is being about that.
All right. Are we ready to get to the man of the hour?
Yeah. The
man of the show.
Yeah, the triumphant, like, Ye finally comes through now. In the chorus that now involves like Toliver, Ye, and Kid Cudi. All three of them join together. It's like if Magnolia, right? You have all these disparate stories in the movie Magnolia, and then you finally have this event that impacts all of them, which is frogs raining down from the sky. And you start cutting between all the characters in a way that feels very unified for the first time. Or you could imagine like having multiple characters in a movie and then having like 3 frames on screen at one time where you're seeing each of the characters kind of doing their individual things, but it's all happening at once on the screen.
Right. Yeah, exactly that. I love the Magnolia reference, so we're on the same page.
So we get Kanye saying, "How can I get through?" as well as Don Toliver saying, "How can I get through?" Don't leave so soon. Kids Cudi saying "To the moon." So it's like, how can I get through to the moon? Like, how can I get through? Don't leave so soon, which kind of gets at those contrasting energies, right? Like the one is the longing of don't leave so soon, and the other is the desire to get to the moon, whether that's reconnection and just feeling that person's presence or the darker energy that we've talked about. And then we get early afternoon, I want to go to the moon, which the early afternoon's the only unique thing that Ye says in this entire song.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, how do you take the idea of early afternoon in this song? We're speaking ahead of time about just the idea that this album has already had elements of nighttime to it, right? On Praise God, we have from the Gwendolyn Brooks poem, "It can't always be nights," like, you know, the dawn will come kind of thing. So you have maybe that idea to it that we've moved from darkness to early afternoon, or we're moving in that direction away from darkness to daytime to afternoon to lights. But then you also have the idea that sometimes you see the moon during the day, which is always a little jarring because the moon's so associated with the nights. Yeah. But there are times of the year where the moon's coming up in the middle of the day. It's 11 a.m. and you see the moon in the sky.
I saw a full moon the other day during daylight, and yeah, it's trippy.
It's trippy. It's cool. I still remember being a kid and that happening for the first time and me running inside and being like, the moon's out. The moon's out.
Shit's
like, what's
happening.
going on? Yeah, my parents are just like, yeah.
Yeah, dude.
It's a thing. It's a thing. So, I mean, you could start to read into that and like the symbolism of that you can be going through your day-to-day life. And there's this idea that the moon is above you, that you're feeling the presence of these people, that you're feeling the pull of the moon. You could look at it that way. Or just that throughout the day, it's not just the nighttime, but even during your daytime, you can have this desire suddenly to go to the moon and all that kind of contains.
Yeah, I liked what you said earlier, how the moon, it comes and goes, and it can... when it represents this idea of connection and like reaching something beyond yourself, that it comes and goes, but like sometimes it is there during the day. It's this kind of it's a celestial thing that like you can't control or can't keep track of. It comes in and out of your life. It's beyond you. And the idea that it could be there in the early afternoon, either just in thought, like you're saying, or just the moon does pop up sometimes, and it stirs up all these things you only associate with night, like these darker feelings. That's incredible. And I think partly because of that line, maybe that's why I think of Kid Cudi sipping coffee. Like, I really do think that's why, like, I just picture Cudi, like, sitting there with coffee, like, thinking about these things in the morning, like, and seeing the moon or something. There's something to that imagery that's so light and lovely. Because, like, yeah, nighttime, you think of darkness, you could think of something darker. But the idea that it could happen in the early afternoon when you're in this moment of peace and contemplation, I love that image.
Yeah, it's just the image of the moon during the daytimes.
Yeah.
Always a little. It makes me think of the movie Another Earth as well.
Yeah.
Which isn't the moon necessarily in the sky. It's another Earth that keeps getting closer and closer. And
that
there's
Earth
some
has a
great
moon.
images. That Earth
does it? I don't know.
Does it?
I watched it semi recently, actually, and I don't remember.
Did you? Why didn't you tell me that?
God, maybe I did tell you. I don't remember if we talked about it.
You absolutely did not tell me, because I haven't thought about Another Earth for a number of years. But there's a period that was in my top 10.
Oh yeah, no, it's really good. Lauren and I watched it, I think probably 3 years ago.
Oh, okay. Did she like it?
Yeah, we both really enjoyed it. Yeah.
Okay, good. It's just does such great things, especially that finale, like that last like minute of the movie.
It's like, it's totally like, because you and I used to cover like film festivals. Like, it's so that kind of movie that you would see at a film festival, like an indie, like it's, I don't even know how to describe it, but like all indie movies were like kind of like that back then.
Yeah. Ending with like something that's just a little surreal.
A philosophical ending.
Yeah. And because they couldn't afford to do something larger, they save it all for that last moment.
Yeah, right.
Like, we just splurged our whole budget on this one thing that's like has huge implications, but because we're an indie movie, we can't do anything more
I'm kind of
that.
romantic for those times when movies were like that. I don't know. Maybe I just don't keep up with movies enough these days, but I feel like that's not really as much of a thing anymore.
I don't know if that surreal, like climactic surrealism is as trendy in the indie scene.
Yeah.
I mean, those movies didn't quite catch on
Right.
in the public space as much. Though it also makes me think of Shelter.
Take Shelter?
Yeah, Take Shelter.
Yeah.
Which I hated Take Shelter.
Yeah, I didn't like that one either.
It was a whole lot of like the most obvious things and then one stunning thing at the end.
Love Michael Shannon.
10 Cloverfield Lane also had a similar structure. And then what was it, like Monday Special, Midnight Special?
Oh, Midnight Special, yeah.
Yeah, that had a similar thing to it.
Wasn't
Like,
that the guy
we're
that
going to
made
have-
Take Shelter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also Michael Shannon.
Who, again, we love.
Yep. Oh, man. Okay.
Rabbit hole.
We went to the moon. Sometimes we do it too. So early afternoon, I want to go to the moon. Don't leave so soon. How could I get through? How can I get through? So just getting into the process, getting at the idea of like could, which is more like, you know, if I was going to, how could I versus how can I? Which is a little more present and like, I'm doing this. How can I?
The other new thing here too is Cudi saying, take you to the moon.
Oh yeah.
Which like we could get into all kinds of different, like what that could mean. But I feel like, again, it's a mix of everything we've talked about. Like making that journey yourself or like taking someone to this place you really want to go. There's something like hopeful about that to me.
I just immediately think about that cliche of a parent saying to a kid, like, I brought you into this world, I can take you out. Like, I brought you to this earth, I can take you to the moon. Like,
yeah. I like that.
So,
maybe that's what Cudi's doing.
Essentially, I think Kid Cudi's saying, I will murder you.
Yeah. Or he's just like chastising his kids in that moment. I don't know if he has kids or just the kids he plans to have?
I think he has a daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, he definitely has a kid, but yeah, just there's something positive or vaguely threatening about it.
I can't decide which one.
And then how could I get through? Early afternoon, I want to go to the moon. Take you to the moon.
I also want to say, first of all, these three voices here mixed together, it's incredible.
Oh yeah,
because the song itself, the production, it's the same the entire time. It's like this guitar that keeps going up, and there's just this keyboard sound, like the card goes up and up and up, and then it comes back down, and that just like repeats the whole time. And so you could think of the song being like static in that way, but it's not. Like there's always change. There's always it's always an upward trajectory, especially when we get here to the final part of the song with all three of them singing. Like they all have these different energies. Like Don Toliver has this like heavenliness. Kid Cudi is like crooning. It almost feels like him. It's very intimate. And then you have like Kanye pleading and like hoping for something. It's so interesting. And they all have different tones. And to hear all of their voices come together here, like this is to me just the magic of music. Like the fact that you can construct something like this. Like this is such a unique sound to have these three different kinds of singers coming together, and all bring their different energies to it, yet all kind of getting at the same thing and achieving something that's beyond just one person saying something, like something simple. It becomes this full-bodied thing that I think again reflects all those contrasting energies we all feel all the time when it comes to stuff like this.
I think when you zoom out, it's also just getting at the idea that these were individual voices and now they're mixing together. So even if they are still isolated individuals, we know that the emotion that they're feeling is broader and is something that connects all of them. So in a way, you have this connection that's coming through despite all of them still feeling like a little sad, a little longing. And that's exactly what they're looking for, right? Like the moon represents, and the quest to get to the moon represents connection, whether it's the physical connection of wanting to go there by any means necessary, or the spiritual connection of just feeling that person still present in your life. But having all three of them come together, at least through their like longing, connects them. So you're getting this closure to the longing, whether or not you realize it or not.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's powerful.
Yep. It's very cool. It is very, very cool. And then leads into maybe the most dramatic song on the album with Heaven and Hell. No, Jesus Lord has to be the most dramatic.
Yeah.
No. Or is Heaven and Hell?
Like Heaven and Hell's dramatic and just like the way it sounds, but Jesus Lord, like we've talked about a lot of times on the show, like it's kind of the centerpiece of the album, so like it's dramatic in its own way.
Yeah, it's like it is a sun.
Yeah,
and the rest of the album kind of revolves around it. But I'm excited to look into that transition from Moon and where we're leaving off with Moon into Heaven and Hell and the sample on Heaven and Hell and just the energy. I feel like we're going to be seeing a lot of cool payoffs, but yeah.
Yeah, I do want to mention though, just really quick, the outro, which is Kid Cudi just doing his thing, like, ooh, just like going for it. The cool part of this, I think, sonically, is that all of his parts in the chorus and like kind of that outro where Don Toliver, Kanye, and Cudi all come together is, Don Toliver's voice floats, like Kanye's fully singing and carrying out the notes. But if you listen closely, you can hear that Kid Cudi's parts are kind of like choppy and spliced in. He says like to the moon, and then like it cuts. It's not like he's crooning or anything, which I think allows the end to have so much more power, that he finally does blow up and kind of go beyond, like, goes outside of the register, like goes up enough to like carry the song to this final moment where like we hear Kid Cudi doing his thing. I just think I don't know how conscious that is, like when they're constructing this song, but it ends up happening that way, and why I think the outro is so powerful.
And he has those extended moments. It's not just I think about the outro on Guilt Trip, where Cudi does kind of a similar crooning, like, if you love me so much, why'd you let me go?
Right. Yes.
Why'd you let me go? And it's nice, but it also doesn't extend for a while, where with this you just get that long, like, whoa,
like, especially a song like where you picture somebody just sitting there and thinking about something, like it's so that there isn't really Guilt Trip, like there are other parties involved, like this is just a moment of like you're with yourself and you're reflecting on yourself.
Yeah, it's nice.
Yeah,
I like the outro, and just, man, how Cudi says, "I'm ashamed."
Yeah, it's great.
I can't get enough of too.
By the way, this is the reason we needed Chris, I need you to help me say this word.
Oh, glab glow.
Glob.
Glab glow.
Glob.
Glob glow.
Glob.
Glob glow.
Glob.
Glob
Gab
glow.
Glab. Listen to the last episode if you want to get that one. Why I don't know if could you have Kid Cudi on back-to-back songs? Like, I'd rather have Kid Cudi on this song than Remote Control.
Oh, I mean, I don't think you can't have Kid Cudi on back-to-back
Right.
songs.
I guess I could be convinced.
But it would be less of a treat, maybe, just because you're going to get that extended Cudi verse, which was a little more like Bachelor Bad Boy.
Yeah, right.
And maybe if it wasn't coming at the end, like how we talked about the restructured version,
Right.
where Cudi's verse was coming as like
Yeah.
the second thing. But yeah, it would be a little stranger to go from Cudi having that like longer verse at the end of Remote Control
And acting
to
like
that
that.
ending and acting like that, right? Going to Don Toliver starting this, and suddenly Kid Cudi coming in and being like, never forget all the memories.
Yeah.
Like, I sip out my cup. Like,
You-
yeah.
I think you're right. I think Kanye actually is pretty conscious of stuff like that. Like, you think of Ty Dolla $ign on Ye and like what he represents, or Vori on this album. Like, he's on the album 3 or 4 times, and like he always kind of carries the same energy and represents something crucial to Kanye's psyche. He's never he never conflicts himself in the way Cudi would if you had both Moon and Remote Control in here.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I'm thinking about Justin Vernon on
Oh yeah.
Hold My Liquor and I'm In It,
Yeah.
where you're just like,
The
okay,
indie side of Kanye.
yeah. He's not necessarily he's like represents the vulnerabilities on
Right.
Hold My Liquor and represents the vulnerabilities I'm In It. So you're not really losing anything. But yeah, Cudi's verse would just be the verses would be a little jarring.
Yeah. Well, we can still go listen to the Cudi verse on Remote Control anyway, so all's good.
Yeah, it'd be like if instead of Vori on No Child Left Behind, you had Fivio doing like the Vori portion, and Off the Grid was like Come to Life.
Yeah, right.
You're just like, okay, you just got this extended, awesome Fivio verse, and then suddenly he's like singing No Child Left Behind. You're like, huh?
I think he should change it to Fivio.
Fivio. I think he should just go by Fievel,
Then he should go west.
Oh, there it is. All
did
right,
it.
we peaked.
Sadly, that was the peak for us.
Well, then,
Okay, yeah. Heaven and hell next time. But until we get there, because I'm thinking of all the fire that's going to be revolving around us during that heaven and hell episode, because hell is going to be part of the mixture, I'm going to want to keep it wavy until then.
yeah, you're going to want to like just bring all the waves, all the water with you. And then what was the thing I said at the end of last episode that I was like, oh, that's going to be how I close shows from now on?
Was it it has something to do with the guy who's featured in the outro of Remote Control?
Yeah, I guess stay wavy and keep it glob glow.
Gab Collab.
I don't even remember how to say his name.
That's it. All you got to do is remember that first part.
Glob Glow? Is that it?
Gab Galab. God, this is terrible.
Bye.